right, it's May 20th, and I'm here with Heather Cumming, and we're doing interview number 1 to document basically your life and your career and the impact that you're having on this world. So I do want to start off, like I start off every single interview, in a series, the first interview. Tell me a little bit about yourself.
My name is Heather Cumming. I am 42 years old. I have a daughter named Radiance. She's 12. Light of my life. I love Africa with my entire heart, and I'm so excited to have any opportunity to talk about it. Any slight chance I can get, I will take.
Well, we're here in the Dayton area because you grew up in this area and you were back visiting. So talk a little bit about early years growing up in this area and talk about your family.
Yeah. So I come from Ohio, and it's funny because when I was young, that wasn't something that meant anything to me. And now that I'm older, I am so absolutely grateful for that, because it's a really it's a part of our country that I feel like is a touch slower in pace. Even than my daughter and I were talking about in Colorado, it seems like everything is so speedy.
Where are you in Colorado?
Just anywhere along the Front Range that I can stay with someone that won't kick me out, or my mom, or she lives almost at the Wyoming border. But I just feel like Ohio is like people are very friendly. They're talkative. Things just seem to be a pace that's a little bit slower for me, and I do better with that. And then the rain and the water and the green, and I love the trees, and I feel like my being is starting to really tap into the earth situation and the water issue that I've been working with all these years in Africa, and now I'm starting to think about it not just in Africa, but how maybe one day my work will be of value to more than just Africa.
I think you're actually spot on there, because this is something we on this side of the ocean are starting to just grapple with.
Yeah.
It's not an endless supply.
I call it the weight of water. And you don't realize, like, what is dirty water. And I don't mean like when you get it from the source. I mean when you use it. What do you consider dirty? So we have all these different tubs in our house. And depending on how dirty the laundry is, you can do the laundry, but then still use that water maybe for dishes. See what I'm saying? I mean, depending, how filthy were these soiled clothes, right? But I've never in any of these villages seen somebody just use the water once. Like, it's like, how many cycles do you use it before you fling it?
Yeah.
And even if you're flinging it, if there's soap in it, you're not going to use it for the garden. But if there's a bunch of food particles in it without soap, you're going to use that water to feed your produce. And it's like what I call the weight of water. If it's dripping out of a faucet, you have no idea how much you're using. But when you're carrying it, it's heavy. So you don't waste water when you have to carry it.
That's a really good point.
And I just call it the weight of water, because it's like water's heavy. Yeah. And we've in many parts of the advanced civilizations, we seem to be using resources at an exponential rate. And a lot of the rest of the world is very respectful about resources, and they're not doing that. And they know the weight of water.
Well, we're going to get into all kinds of conversations about
Yes.
sustainability and
Let's do that.
And
But
such,
yes,
but
Ohio
let's
is
go back
wet.
to
I love it.
Dayton,
Yes,
and
yes,
you
yes.
love it. But talk about growing up here.
Yeah. I loved it. I feel like I was definitely a very privileged girl. I don't think my siblings and I were spoiled. I would not use that word. But we had everything that we needed. So that I guess is privilege, probably the definition of that word. But, we didn't all get a car when we turned 16, but we always had new school shoes every August or September. I didn't really start to respect my position in my own society and how privileged I am until I got to be a bit older and realized, I didn't do anything for this, so I have to share it because I didn't earn it, so it means I have to share it. If I had started off homeless and didn't know how I was going to eat every day and really had to earn my way to go to a school or to eat or to have a pair of school shoes, then that drive inside of me to give back, give, share, it wouldn't be the same. But because I started off on a pedestal, I was born on a throne. So that means I have no choice. It's like, oh, that's a no-brainer.
Mm-hmm. So if I ask you about memories of your childhood, what first comes to mind?
So I was the second born child. I have an older sister, and she was, of course, the smartest kid in her class, and she was one of those that never had to study and aced everything. And of course, she was the center of attention because she was beautiful, and she still is. And I always felt like, how do you compete with that? I was like a really ugly baby. I'll just be honest, really ugly. And I cried all the time, and I was not planned, and my parents were tired. And I kind of always felt like nobody was paying attention to me, which gave me this sort of open, open permission? Is that the right word? Mm-hmm. To just kind of do whatever I wanted. And that has been the theme of my entire life is no one's got their eye on me. I slipped through every crack,
So you didn't really struggle with the middle child syndrome in some ways where you were sort of nobody's paying attention to me. You just kind of owned it.
Embraced it because I had a little sister after me. So I was a second born girl. There was 3 girls. Nobody's going to look at me. And then we had a little brother, and now you're starting to pile on kids. After 3, 4, 4 is a lot, and then 5, 6, you lose count. But that's a lot of kids, and I would never say that I grew up with an inferiority complex, but what I always grew up thinking, which is what I will even say I feel now, is that I never felt like my life was worth so much that I couldn't just give it away. I never felt like I was so important. I never felt like – it's really even hard to verbalize this. I'll come to this later. But I never felt like that I was so important, that I mattered so much, that I was this I always felt like because I had these other 3 siblings, they could take care of making my parents proud. Mm-hmm. I didn't have to do that.
That's really interesting.
Definitely my big sister.
Yeah.
Definitely my little brother. My little sister and I, we shared that middle middle child syndrome. We shared it. And we were both like bad teenagers in the sense of like sneaking, I used to sneak out every night and go drink coffee and Denny's with my friends and philosophize. Like we really weren't doing anything bad.
So bad was in quotes.
But I couldn't just have somebody tell me what to do and do it. I had to find my own way.
Yeah, that's interesting, as it will reflect on, I think, your path to come. But what strikes me too, and this is because, I too am a middle child. We've talked about that. But you have recollection of your parents being tired and kind of your role in that. And that's really interesting because I have 3 kids and there are moments where I have this sort of moment of like, are they going to pick up on this? That, that this is...
And it's varying levels of perception. Like my daughter is like a cat. And I think that's why so many people don't like cats, is because cats are very psychic. Like you can't hide anything from them. They pick up on your energy. Mm-hmm. And I feel like my daughter is a cat. There's nothing that I shield from her. And I feel like I've always had that energetic radar where like I could pick up on those nuances of my parents when they were tired or they were burdened. Like 3 children, 4 children is a lot. And sometimes I feel like having one child, I never had to sacrifice anything. Mm-hmm. 1 is easy.
I always say 1 is 1, 2 is 2, but 3 is 5. There's something about that tipping point. So talk about your parents, though. Like, describe your parents to me.
My parents, when I was young, I was not close to my father because he was always at work. And I was so resentful that I didn't get to spend more time with him. And now that I am an adult, I really have to eat humble pie because I realize now, like, oh my gosh, his work. He was a criminal lawyer. He was a defense attorney. He had murder trials. He defended, like a prosecuting attorney, that's one art, but a defense attorney, when you know darn well. And then it's like, okay, let's just, how much lesser of a sentence is he going to get? Mm-hmm. And that was my father's job. And he would come home and talk about his day in the prison, like visiting his clients. And I thought that was normal because as children, that's what we think, is that it's normal. And then as I got older, I started to realize, like, my father had an impossible job. And part of why he did it was so that he could support us and be able to provide our every need, which he did. And I don't regret the way I felt when I was a child because it was out of love. Like out of love, I wanted to see him more. And out of love, I wanted to spend more time with him. I feel like my mom was behind everything. She was incredible as a mother, and I was incredibly close to her. And I still think that I'm incredibly close to her, despite differences that we have. I don't want differences between people to change the way that I love them. And if it changes the way that they love me, I can't control that. But on my end, my mother has been a very powerful force in my life. I wouldn't have been able to start my nonprofit without her. And really, to date, she has helped me in various ways run it. But I know we'll talk about that later.
Which is really cool, though. I mean, that is really cool that she's still a presence like that in your life.
So my father, my father is a justice system. My father is, he's astrologically, he's a Libra, but he is justice. He is democracy. He is sticking up for the underdog every time. And it's funny, like so many of the things that I feel and the things that I believe in, I didn't know that he does too. Maybe I was never supposed to know that and come to that conclusion on my own,
It's amazing how the influence that parents have over the years that emerges that we weren't aware of.
And then we'll talk about this in the future, but my daughter, her father has no presence in her life, but yet he is ever present.
Interesting.
Because there's no getting out of genetics.
Nope. That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Like he's just as powerful an influence on her without being around her as he might be if he was with her, because so much of him is in her.
Okay, so how would you describe like just to get a sense of the family dynamic?
Yes.
During that particular time as you're growing up.
Okay. Yes.
What did you all do as families, and what was important to you all as a family?
Going on vacation every summer.
Oh.
That was something that was like we looked forward to it all year.
Would you go to the same place every year?
We would go to Colorado. Oh. And that was what made me decide to move to Colorado when I was, I guess, 19 or 20. And because my best friends moved out there basically together. But of course, that's another story. And we'd go like on the off years, like because we couldn't afford every summer to go. We would stay at this. It was called Long's Peak Inn and Guest Ranch, and it was in Allens Park, Colorado, near the trailhead of Long's Peak, which is the highest mountain in Rocky Mountain National Park. And it was expensive, so we couldn't do that every year. So we would go to Lake Michigan or, it was just, we used to have so much fun on those family trips. And it was like all four of us, we knew from when we were young that we would have no choice, that we would go to college. My parents forced us. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I tried to get out of that, but I was forced. Value system. We had to eat dinner together every night. I don't remember talking much at the dinner table. I feel like that was the time when my parents were married, that they would talk a lot between each other, and we were just sort of silently there with our food on our plate. We were seen and not heard, I guess. But my parents got divorced when I was 18. It was my senior year of high school. So I never think of myself as a kid of divorced parents, ever. Never, because I was almost ready to go to college when they got divorced. So.
Yeah. Wow, that's interesting. Huh. Okay, yeah. So you mentioned college. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You knew you were on the track, right? Because you kind of felt like you were put on that track. So what was the plan?
Okay, so I was going to be a fashion designer. Yeah. And I've always loved what I would explain now is like costume design. Like if like that that wonderful PBS series called Downton Abbey, the clothing, and how they'll make scenes where literally the landscape matches the dress and the hat, which matches the tie that the man is wearing. And I'm sitting here thinking, like, this is just so intricate. Makeup. One of my biggest fans is Annie Lennox. Like, I idolize her eye makeup. The ancient Egyptian eyewear, the black kohl, the Turkish kohl. I love, I guess you'd say Halloween. I love that each of us has so many layers, and being able to express those layers in such a nonviolent way as our clothing, our hair, our makeup. I always have loved all that stuff. So I was going to be a fashion designer, and my first love, who's still one of my best friends, I used to call him, and in those days it was landline phones, and like clog up the phone for hours and get in trouble and with my parents. And I called him one day, and this was just before the end of senior year, when I knew that I was going to University of Cincinnati to do this fashion design DAP, the Design of Art, Architecture, and Planning college school. And his mother picked up the phone, and she loved me and I loved her. And she was like, oh, so my son told me that you're going to do this fashion design. And I was like, yes, I got in, and I'm going to be so good at it. And I just, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, oh. And there was this really weird pause. And I was like, oh, I'm really happy. And she said, oh, knowing you as deeply as I do, I always just thought that you would do something so much deeper with your life. And it was one of those weird things that hit me, and I let it go, and it's lived inside of me for a very long time, because I was never supposed to be a fashion designer, and I went to the art school, and I worked as hard as I could and got never an F, but a lot of D's and some C's. And I worked so hard drawing cones and spheres and little colored swatches. And I just didn't, I guess at the end of the day, I didn't care at all and was working really hard and still think my cone was good. And it got like a C minus, D plus, and C me. And everything, see me at the end of class, and go up there, and the teacher's like, so what's going on? And it's like, I stayed up till 5 a.m. like doing this. And it just was never meant to be. I couldn't physically draw. And to this day, I have an issue with the University of Cincinnati because they only made a GPA prerequisite for their art school. They never made art classes a prerequisite. And so I was in classes with these people who had been doing this for years. And I've never knew, because it's figure drawing. It's, and there's a lot of drawing and fashion design. And that wasn't even really, I should have been like a costume artist or a makeup artist or something like that. But it's just, now I look back on it and it's like, it's not fair to do that to students. Like, if you're just asking for a certain GPA but no art background,
right,
and then all the students have had an art background, so they're up at this high level. Well, all these other kids that have never taken a drawing class in their life, they're not going to be at that level.
It's like a music school admitting you when you're a garage band playing electric guitar player, but putting you on a cello track.
Right. And there's like all these kids that have been in orchestra since third grade.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Good comparison.
Wow, that's really wild.
I even at the time, I was like, this isn't right. And I made friends with a guy. His name was Dan, and he was like a clown on the side. And it was the weirdest thing because I always knew I had known him before, but we couldn't figure out where. And it was a weird deja vu past life thing. And he would work with me, like trying to help me, because he didn't want me to fail out of that school, but I did. So I went from being a straight A, every now and then a regular A, but usually an A plus, an overachiever, if you will, to being a failure. That humility, that does something to your psyche when you're used to it being at the height of your class, and the, I guess, is arrogance the right word, that ultimately comes with that you're smarter than other people. And then now suddenly you're the dropout getting D's. So I think this was all meant to happen, in the great scheme. So
Did the mother's comment ever, did it stick with you at that time, or is that something
the mother's comment, because I loved her son so completely, I loved her so completely, and that comment was this very odd wisdom that even my own parents had never said anything like that to me. But she said, I really thought you would do something larger.
This is so interesting because I'm having mixed things happening right now because one, it sounds so cool, as a parent who, has a daughter in college now and one on her way. I can't imagine, that seems cruel to me. At the same time, she gave you this great gift, and that gift is something you and I were just talking about before we started recording, and this was your tendency to just be kind of brutally honest and say things. And she kind of did that to you and did you this incredible favor.
Yes, and I have a really good friend. He's one of my best friends. He offends others all the time, and he has never offended me, even when he's put me in awkward positions, because I've always understood that where he's coming from was a love space. And see, that's the only place that we can be brutally honest about anything, is when it comes from love.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And I knew that she loved, that his mother loved me, and I knew she knew me maybe even more deeply than my parents, because she recognized that there was some value in me that was greater than a cute outfit.
Yeah.
Or good hair, you see. So she planted that seed. So now we're coming to the failure year, my freshman year at University of Cincinnati. And the best friend I ever had, that I'm not in contact with her anymore, but I met her in the dorms the freshman year at University of Cincinnati, and she and I decided that together we were going to move to Colorado, because the boyfriend, who I don't even think at this time he was the boyfriend, who knows, he and these other two guys who were also my best friends were moving out to Colorado, because one of the guys, his parents had a second home there, so he could get residency. He wouldn't have to pay out-of-state tuition, and he wouldn't have to take that year off for residency. So those three guys moved out there, and then the lady, the best friend of mine, she and I, we shortly after, some months later, we let the school year finish, and then we went out there, and then I think a few days later, another one of these guys that we were that same sneak out group that we'd sneak out. We all went. Some of us went to middle school together. We went to high school together, and we like to just sit around and philosophize. And one by one, we all moved out there together. So we all came from Ohio, and one by one, we all just moved out to Colorado together. And most of us are all still there together. And I call us like a friend family, because it's weird. I feel like my blood family is my depth, right? But my friend family, yeah, I guess I'd say that. My blood family is my ancestral line. It's my taproot, right? It's my earth anchor. And my friend family is sort of my cosmic, otherworldly people that understand me. They love me unconditionally, they love me without judgment. And I don't know how you can't weigh those two things. Like they're just, which of your kids do you like the most?
Right.
You can't.
Right.
You can't. It's just which of your eyeballs do you prefer?
Yes.
I mean.
So you had this predisposition for Colorado, having vacationed there on a regular basis throughout your childhood. This other person had a connection through a family, second home. Was there anything else drawing you to this space? Was it, I guess what I'm asking is, were you going there to go to that school, or were you just going there?
Yeah, I needed to be with those people.
That's it. Okay.
And I need to comment on this because it kind of got sidetracked. When my parents got divorced when I was 18, I really think what got me through that was these guys. There was a group of guys and one girl, and she ended up marrying one of these guys. And without them, I feel like they were the reason I went to school. I mean, like middle school is bad, but high school is like a whole nother level of like torture. And I don't even know why. I mean, I like those senior superlatives. I think I was voted like friendliest and best dressed. Like people liked me. I liked people. I didn't have problems, but yet still I remember it as torture. Mm-hmm. And I would go to school to hang out with these friends. I'd write them notes. The one guy I was in love with, like obsessively in love with him. It was an excuse to like wear makeup and wear weird clothes and go see my friends and like stare at the clock and the minutes pass and eventually school's over. And so I feel like they helped me get through like school. And then on top of it, like this divorce with my parents, was really hard because they were married, I think, a couple months shy of 30 years. And I think the hardest part was that, this is confusing, my mom's parents were best friends with my dad's parents. So my parents were like childhood friends. The two sides of the family were like one family. So when they got a divorce, it was really traumatic for like the grandparents and the aunts and uncles, and it was just a lot. And I feel like the way I got through that were these guys. And, they were just my best friends. They still are. And so it was like, okay, now I'm a failure. I dropped out of design school. I need to just go be with these guys. And when I say be with them, this is friendship. This is deep love friendship. It's not romantic. So I get out there in Colorado, like this is Boulder, Colorado. It's like, could there be a funner place on the planet?
And this would have been when?
1999. Yeah.
That's a good time.
Yeah.
Boulder.
Boulder was amazing, and I cannot say the same. I don't feel the same way about Boulder now. Being someone with low income, someone that values many different types of people, I see Boulder as being incredibly elitist. The fact you can't rent a place for less than $2,000 a month, or every home is $800,000 on the low end or something. Just like, so this sad. Is ludicrous. Yeah. Like, yeah. So I do not feel the same way about Boulder as I used to at all. I was like a poor college student and loved every millisecond of it. I loved those guys.
Great music. There was such great music that went through Boulder.
Music and being weird was valued.
Yeah.
They wanted you as weird and eclectic as you were. And that university, I only have good things to say about the University of Colorado at Boulder. And maybe now it would be different. But in those days, like, so that same guy that I said offends people without trying to, but doesn't offend me because he speaks from a love space. He was a year ahead of me, or two. I think he was 2 years ahead, and I didn't know. I had to take a year off, and I worked I worked in a dentist's office, and I sterilized dental instruments, and annoyed people because I asked tons of questions. So then they said I should do bite wing x-rays. So I did that. And then that, advanced to doing the prophylaxis for children. Because if don't know, most people don't know this, but as trained dental hygienist, for people who do prophylaxis for children, you don't have to have gone to dental school or hygiene school.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Didn't know
So
that.
yeah. So I did that, and then they trained me on the job to do some four-handed dentistry. So like they do the root canal, you hand this instrument, you get this cotton or what do you call it? To get the saliva out or all that stuff.
The little vacuum tube thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then by the end, I was doing like answering the phones and doing the insurance stuff and like scheduling people, and that was hard, but I loved it.
Yeah.
So I had to take that year off to get residency.
Mm-hmm.
And
off
then
from school, right?
Right, because I wanted to go back to school, and I wanted to be a resident of Colorado so that I could get in-state tuition. So you have to take a year off to establish residency.
Let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Your parents got divorced at 18. You go to UC. Your mother's now in Colorado. Did she go straight to Colorado?
No.
Okay.
No.
So,
We were
you were there without her.
So
at
that
this
was what
point.
was so fun is we were all out there alone. So okay. So that really, there you go. That's a trigger. That not a trigger, that's a point. That's what I think made all of those guys, all of us are still so close today because we were each other's family. We spent Thanksgiving together, Easter, maybe Christmas, depending. Like all of our family was back in Ohio.
How did the family feel at this point? They had probably some opinions.
Yeah, I think at this point, my family, my parents, I'm concerned, I think they thought I was just sort of like a lost cause. So, but the year working at the dentist's office when I think I had to be there at 6 a.m. And that's rough. In the scrubs, clock in at 6 or whatever.
That's when living with your friends actually works against you.
Yeah,
When
I know.
they're trying to keep you up late. And you're...
I know. Well, I had to be responsible. And I also took night classes because I wanted to boost my GPA because it was so low that I couldn't get into CU Boulder. So I took these night classes, did super well, loved it, worked at the dental school, the dental office. And then the same guy that I keep mentioning, he was like 2 years ahead, the one that doesn't mean to be offensive. And he had mentioned to me, Heather, you should do humanities. That is a perfect major for you because you don't really know what you want to learn about. You don't know what career, but you just know you want to learn. You just know that you're one of these people that's really interested in everything. And humanities is the art of thinking. And he said humanities is the art of feeling. And, oh, man, I love him.
Those are wise words.
Yeah, he told me it was a hike. And I was walking behind him and everybody else was sort of ahead. And I just remember like watching his ankles on the path and what he was saying to me. I was like, okay, I can do that. I couldn't do the design school. I know I'm good at learning. I love school. Like I love learning. It took me all this years of hating school and like dropping or not flunking out, I guess, to make me realize like I love learning. It's wisdom.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know. So yeah, so then I went back to school and I started taking my classes and I loved it. And I got a little job at, I think maybe Whole Foods bought it. I'm not sure. It was called Wild Oats Market. It was on Baseline and Broadway Road right by the campus in Boulder. And this job was just the funnest. Like, nobody worked. You'd walk in the back and be like, where is everybody? And everybody's like in the back eating. And it was like my favorite job ever.
Eating organically.
Eating, just pack their stuff in their faces. And, you know, it was fun.
I think I got, this is totally a side note, but I think I got my first shot of wheatgrass at that exact location.
Yes, I was the juice bar girl, and maybe I made you your wheatgrass shot.
I've never had any kind of exposure to that before, and I had a friend who lived out there, and I went to visit her, and yeah, we swung by there, and I remember the person was like, "Do you want a shot of wheatgrass?" And I was like, "What?"
And they tell you you shouldn't probably have an empty stomach.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in the wheatgrass that it could make you like a little bit nauseous. But yeah, I mean that probably kept me healthy. Mm-hmm. yeah. And it's the tray, you know, of the wheatgrass, and then you cut it. We cut it with scissors, and then you put it in the juicer.
I distinctly remember this.
Yeah.
This is so hilarious. Wow. That's really funny. So what classes were you taking when you did the night classes? Just...
You know, that's so funny. The night classes, I don't remember. I'm sure nothing like math or science. General stuff, probably sociology,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
maybe environmentally based stuff. It was very general, very interesting. The night classes, like I'm going to try to make my daughter, before she goes to college, take some night classes because you're in there with adults. And I think that was part of why I didn't like school. I didn't like the immaturity of so many students that led them to be cruel to each other. I have a very low tolerance for cruelty. It really never has any justification. Never. Mm. If you really think about that. Yeah. And kids at school are traditionally cruel. You can blame it on hormones. You can blame it on anything under the sun. But the bottom line is that we should raise children to be kind. Never, ever try to hurt anybody. And I just felt like even though no one was really mean to me at school, I think in 7th grade gym class, these jock boys would like call me toothpick, which I guess now would be a compliment, but now it's not even true. But like no one was ever mean to me, but I watched people be mean to other kids and like bullies and all of this. And that's what those night classes were to me. It reinvented my love of learning, because it was like, okay, this is what learning really is. It's not about social stuff and who's cool and who isn't and who's going to be picked on and who's a bully. And it's not, it's like adults that are coming like, hey, we paid for this. Like, you know, and so there was a lot of adults in my classes, and that was amazing. And then I feel like with that humanities major, what it is it's a major where of as much value as the professor or the curriculum, the books, is the other students in the classes. Because it's like you couldn't get a more eclectic group of kids than these humanities students. It's like my favorite professor ever. It was like the first day, I think, of my sophomore year. And, I'm trying to think, yeah. And I go in and I guess I was early, but that never happens. But maybe I was early. And I go in, I'm waiting, and this like guy walks in, and I just look at him, and I'm like, that cannot be the professor. Like, is there? He was wearing plaid pants, a sweater with like, you know, those Halloween like a knit sweater, right? But like a skeleton knit into it, right? Like and then like skull earrings, and his head was completely shaved, and his entire head, except for his actual face, was tattoos. And
Wow.
and he was wearing, what are those, like those black kind of like combat boots?
Oh, yeah.
And I just looked at him, and he was older, and I think he was Eastern European or something. He was beautiful. And he just started, he was like, hello, I'm Professor blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, this is my professor. But these are the kinds of people that taught these classes, like people who were not afraid to be not only themselves, but real. And as I get older, human beings who are of much value to me are human beings who know themselves. And I think the world gets caught up in chaos and turmoil when we have no idea who we are, and we ask the society and the people closest to us to define for us what we are, because we're not willing to do the work of going within ourselves to find that out on our own. It is a brutalizing process that we all go through, maybe. But it was just the most incredible college experience. I felt like I was in my element. I felt like it was like exactly what I always really needed, It was like kids in my classes who we would debate about lines of a poem. And the teacher would spend like, the syllabus is like 2 weeks on one poem. And I'm thinking, my parents are, paying for this. I don't want my dad to know, This is what he's paying for. But, yeah.
But it was teaching you to think.
And to study detail.
Yes.
And to go slow, if need be. And that learning is a deep, deep process of intricate, complex layers. And when we're trying to whiz through 8 million books in half of a semester, there's no depth. There's nothing. What we learn, if it diffuses into your heart, then what comes out, what sprouts out the top is wisdom. And there's room for that everywhere. Engineering, biology, are you kidding? Biology is wisdom. But, if we just take everything at that literal space of like, let's get through it, let's do it, we got to get this done. And it's just like, bam, 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 bam. There's no depth. And so my education was deep. It was all that stuff I've told you, and a lot of pain. And then moving across the country and trusting those relationships I had with those guys, that they could be a family to me when I was moving so far away from my family. And then just being in that space where it was like a safe space to ask questions or to I love those classes. I wish I could do them again.
Sure. Yeah. I if I had it, if I could, I would be taking classes all the time. I love it. I love doing it. So, we're going to get to it, but, at some point you go into the Peace Corps, which is what kind of connected us. The story of your experience there, you go off and split off from this Peace Corps experience and launch this nonprofit that has you working in Africa. Looking back on college and this learning experience, was there any kind of foreshadowing of that? Was there a sort of mentor who had connected you to Africa in terms of, or what was there anything connecting you to Africa at this point?
Um, I can't even think about him without crying. My senior year, I took, it was like an elective or something that I needed. It wasn't anything I even was like, I have to deal with this, And somebody was like, you should take this African ensemble. The teacher's an African guy. You can like ditch the class. He won't care. And I'm like, well, that sounds right up my alley. Sign me up. This man was what gave me Africa. And that's why I said I literally can't even think about him without getting completely choked up. And he had this African ensemble, and he was from Ghana, Ghanaian guy. And this was like after, I think it was like 3, 4 in the afternoon. And it was like some of the students played instruments and some of us danced. So I have known since my grandparents went on safari to Kenya when I was 8. They sent my sister and I a postcard, and mine had giraffes on the front. And I knew when I got that postcard, I still have it, that Africa was waiting for me. Like it was like, when are you coming?
That's amazing.
So when I took this ensemble.
Who was the professor?
Kwasi Ampene, Ampene. And he doesn't work at CU Boulder anymore, and I have lost touch with him. But if I ever found him, he knows what he means to me. I've tried to tell him, but this ensemble was like, I am going. I am already halfway there. So my senior year of college, I just spent doing all the stuff that Peace Corps makes you do. And I think I started really early. Like, whatever time frame they tell you, I did it like double the time before.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like was obsessed with going to Africa. And I was like, I knew that I would use the U.S. Peace Corps to do that. So if they didn't send me to Africa, I was dumping Peace Corps. Like I used it to go to Africa.
Yeah. So how did you get connected to Peace Corps?
I just thought that was the easiest way to get to Africa.
So were you aware of Peace Corps as a thing? I mean, most of us kind of had a sense of it.
Yeah, and I think they had some they had like recruiter day, like you'd hear it like on the campus, there are signs like on Sunday there's a Peace Corps recruiting, and you could go like talk to they have a booth or a table and probably offer free food if they're smart as college kids. Mm-hmm. I think just some returned Peace Corps volunteers probably came and talked about their experience or something. Maybe I went to some kind of like an introduction night and just got totally roped in, like everything they were saying. It was like, I want that. This is a perfect job for me. Like JFK made this program for me.
Clearly.
Yeah, like it's my job description.
Yeah.
I left out such an important part, and forgive me. My junior year of college, I studied abroad in England.
Oh.
And what was so funny was people said to me, like, don't you want to go somewhere exotic? Like you're going to England? And I was like, well, this is the cheapest program here. It was at some, university that was like 45 minutes away from London, or a little town called Norwich. And the University of East Anglia, which was profound. It was such a good school. I'm trying not to force my daughter somehow to go there. But going to England was what completely opened me of like the world. Like T is capitalized and the W is capitalized. And one of my best friends, he studied abroad in France while I was studying abroad in England. So we got to hang out with each other. And then because England, the friend, there was an Irish girl that worked with me at the juice bar at Wild Oats Market, and she's still one of my best friends. And she was in Ireland. She would come to the U.S. for the summer and work, and so then I got to see her. I took a couple trips to Ireland. Ryanair, it was like $29 a ticket. You're laughing. Mm-hmm. One of the flights, they let me sit in the aisle.
That's Ryanair.
But that was Ryanair. Yeah, $29. Mm-hmm. You know, the old poor days of Europe, like when they first got the euro, but yeah. And yeah, so that was like that time of my life that I realized, oh my gosh, I can live in a greater, like the world just kept expanding. Like it started with Ohio and then it expanded to Colorado. Now it expanded to Europe. And then what blew me through the ceiling was my graduation gift to myself. You know, everybody gives you some money or something. You graduate from college. I don't know what you're supposed to use the money on, but I used mine to go to India. And I had a exchange student friend from India, and I was actually closer to her mom than I was to her. And the mother was really appreciative because a lot of kids weren't very open with her daughter because the English wasn't very good. And so the mother invited me to come visit them in India. And I went in July, which it was hot. And that was the first time I had laid eyes on, what are we going to call this? Toxic poverty, where you're blown away. And I swear I went through a process. Like I didn't just go over there and see this stuff and like, la-di-da, where's my dinner? I like would go back to my guest room and just like bawl my eyes out. I had to like process this. In the back of your mind, you know that this exists, but you kind of hope it doesn't.
But you don't see it in Boulder. You don't see it in Ohio.
And it's like, oh, God, should I have stayed in the bubble?
At that scale,
my bubble popped.
Yeah.
And I took this hard. Like it hit me hard. And India is everything, but it's rough. And I got the sickest I've ever been in my life. I was sick. I got sick. It was a huge, huge opening. But that is what made me know I can do Africa, because Africa, I just didn't know if I could physically do it.
Sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Like Peace Corps can take care of me, but to what point?
So when you went to India, you had a sense for what was to come in terms of Peace Corps and Africa on the horizon? Or
I knew that I was aiming for Africa. I knew that because my whole senior year, I think when I went to India, okay, the timeline's messed up. I went to graduated in May 2003, went to India in July of 2003. October, November 2003, I was invited to Peace Corps Zambia. I accepted the invitation, and in January of 2004, I went to Philadelphia for 3 days of training, and then they flew us to Johannesburg for 2 days, and then to Zambia. So,
wow.
So that was the timeline. So I think I hadn't been formally invited by the Peace Corps yet, but it was literally months before that, and I took that trip to India, and it was as life-changing for me as studying in England and getting to be in Europe with the one best friend in Ireland, the other best friend in France. That was profound. And then the India trip was like otherworldly. It was like, I can't believe that this exists on the same planet as, Ohio or
Sure.
Boulder or whatever it is.
So you had said that, Peace Corps initially was all about Africa. You literally are using the Peace Corps to get to Africa. But it sounds like to me, India kind of planted the seed of there's work to be done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if for no other reason than just trying to equalize this vast inequality of human beings, of humanity, like I'm still trying to figure that out. I work with that every day. Like, do we accept this? Rhetorical question with a lot of question marks at the end. Do we accept this? I don't. I know I'm one person, but I'm one person, and I'm not that different than many, many, many people. So I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't accept it. So if all of us that don't accept it can work together in whatever ways, the situation has already changed, you see, because it's been given consciousness. Consciousness, even if the action is still there, people still drinking dirty water, right? But there's an awareness, there's a consciousness. Maybe action will come later, but the very consciousness of that, the situation has already changed.
Mm-hmm. You're right. I've never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
That's really...
It's intention, it's energy, it's power.
Action is almost inevitable once the consciousness...
Exactly. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah. Okay. So I am not a Peace Corps, returned Peace Corps volunteer. We have done several hundred at this point, almost 800, I think, interviews. Peace Corps volunteers. I did not do those interviews. You've participated in that project as an interviewee. Explain to me, how does Peace Corps train somebody?
They do. I mean, I'm quite biased. I loved Peace Corps, and my project is essentially an extension of it. My project uses the Peace Corps value system. They do an incredible job because I'm with you. I walked into it in disbelief, like, how are they going to pull this off? And I think our intake group, I don't know that there was even 20 of us. Let's do an interval here. Let's say there was anywhere from 18 to 24 of us that were in the new intake group. LTM was the education group. That acronym means Learning at Taonga, Taonga Market. And it was a little, like, I always describe it as a radio program that was like Sesame Street with the characters, but on the radio.
That's incredible.
It was a distance learning initiative from the Zambian Ministry of Education. And
so when you went to Philly,
yeah,
you knew this was where you were going.
I did. But let me just be so honest with you. I didn't care at all. Like, I remember being sent this stuff in the mail, and I didn't even look at it because I was like, I don't even care what I do. Like, I'll do whatever you tell me. Like, I have to go. I felt like I felt like I was gonna die unless I got there. Like a fish, like how long can you be out of the water? Like how much? And it was like, I need this. Like, I don't care what this is. Yeah. I'll deal with whatever comes with it because I am an incredibly introverted person. I love people, but I love being alone equally. And I was terrified at the idea of like spending days on end with strangers. And I've also never been very good at hanging out with people my own age. as weird as that sounds, because of that group of guys and then the one girl, and then the best friend in Ireland. These are exceptions. I would say in general, I'm much better with people older than me. Like I was real close with my grandparents, and it kind of terrified me, like being around primarily people my own age for days and days and days and days and days on end. That the social part of it, like the reason I hated school, like all that, I was like, I'm not even going to think about that. I'm just going to go through with it and face every day and every challenge as it comes. Because I was nervous. I mean, I was petrified. But it was like I had no choice.
That is really interesting, because here you are, this like almost adventurer, that I'm just to recap, you drop everything and head out to Colorado to hang out with the friends, but you survive, get a job, and thrive and succeed. You go abroad. That takes guts to take the semester abroad. It does. I opted out. I didn't do it myself and regret it. But then the Indian experience, you're just going to do it. So here's somebody who you're absolutely somebody who clearly at this point is living in hope and not in fear, at the same time. And have kind of, it feels like an adventure spirit. But
it's so funny. Like I always think of every human being, whether we accept it or realize it or not, is that we're half human and half spirit. We're both. You have to be human to be spirit, but you have to be spirit to be human. And so the human part of me was very afraid. I almost looked at it as some kind of an odd death sentence. Like I really, truly did not know if I would come back, but I had to do it anyway.
Wow.
And that's a spirit side.
Yeah.
Because I was controlled by a force much greater than myself, which I literally still think is controlling me.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my project is. It's something so much greater than me. But I digress. What were you saying?
I don't know. We were talking about spirit, and we were talking about adventure. But I think this idea that I think it's really interesting. I do know, because I think it's interesting that you felt this pull, and that you have this introverted side that's very prominent, but you still felt this pull, and your awareness of the pull too, because not everybody's going to be aware of that at this age and at this phase of life. But you were very aware of that draw, which I think is great. So Peace Corps has you in Philly for how long?
I think this is crazy too. I think it was either 2 nights and 3 days or 3 nights and 4 days.
Okay, so that's kind of just like staging you.
Yeah, and they call it staging.
Oh, they do? Okay. Well, there you go.
But here's the crazy part. I got there a day late. I got there late because we had inclement weather in Dayton, Ohio. And I missed flights, and I don't remember if I got there on the same day, but really late into the day, or the following day. It's funny because at the time it was so important, and now I don't remember, but that was pivotal because I spent the entire Peace Corps experience feeling like I was never part of the group. And that was very interesting, too, because it made me more connected to the Africans and less connected to the Americans.
That's fascinating.
And it was because I got there late. And that wasn't my fault. I was born 2 weeks late. I think that was my fault. I'm late chronically. But this thing really was out of my hands. This was weather.
Mm-hmm.
And I got there, and everybody had made friends.
Bonded.
And I was always behind.
I mean, that's kind of like, you're kind of describing high school, though, right? I mean, you kind of were.
Yeah, I wasn't
people
never
liked you, but you were kind of still.
Yeah.
the sneak out coffee drinking. Because they didn't drink coffee when we were that age in high school.
I think you're not supposed to. I think you're not supposed to.
Right. Like that was we really there wasn't Starbucks or anything like that when we were in high school.
You're right, and it stunts your growth.
And I'm saying we, and I'm older than you, but I'm surely it doesn't stunt your growth. But
you're right, because I wouldn't let my daughter drink a bunch of coffee. What's so funny, and the point of all that is we weren't sneaking out at night, drinking or doing a bunch of drugs. We were literally at Denny's, giving them business, and probably we were, with the amount of coffee we drank, probably we depleted the business. But
we digress. But you're in Philadelphia and you're not feeling as connected. But 3 days in staging, and then you're off to. Yeah.
And what was so funny, again, the thing with connecting to people older than me, the first person I felt really connected to was my boss. And it was her first time being having this position in Peace Corps. She had been, she served in Peace Corps. Oh, she'd get angry at me. The Caribbean. I think she was in the Caribbean. She was on an island. And she would get angry at me. And I, to this day, love her and frequently email with her. But I felt more connected to her than I did the other people in my group. And I think that's a very fascinating part of it, too, was because of that inherent disconnection I felt with the other Americans. I think it made me feel that much more at liberty to be connected to the Africans, because I know that I had a really special Peace Corps in the sense that my site was really far away. It was hard to get to. It is a challenging site. It was supposed to be. It is. It still is. For let's say 3 to 6 hour journey on a very bad road to the nearest town. And then the nearest town doesn't even have electricity or Wi-Fi.
Wow. That's today.
That's today. That was 20 years ago.
Wow.
Or 18 years ago.
Wow. I guess I always had a sense of, I always thought that Peace Corps did a stateside months and months of training, preparing you for things.
They used to.
Oh, they did. Okay.
That was in the 60s, 70s. Somewhere, I think, in the 80s or 90s is when they started doing in-country training.
Oh, okay.
Realizing the inherent value of living with a host family and starting to absorb the culture, but without being thrown in it.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant.
It's a great idea. And again, I ended up in Peace Corps Zambia had never had this happen. And I was, of course, the one exception or whatever, that I had to be removed from my host family during training because the host father was trying to have a romantic relationship with me. Yes, that was not safe. That was not. And of course, it's always me, It's always got to be, I always have to be the exception. But so they took me out. This was towards the end. And all the other kids were I shouldn't say kids, volunteers, because we had one man that was well into his 60s. And he would joke that Peace Corps was his retirement plan. So he just kept doing Peace Corps. It was his third place of service, I think. That was his retirement.
Kind of brilliant.
I know.
That's
I was
brilliant.
You're really on to something. But it was I didn't have that much of my training not in my Peace Corps host family. It was towards the end of the training anyway, but they had to remove me because the husband would come home drunk and it wasn't safe.
You kind of are joking about that, but that's horrifying.
Well, again, it was all these other Peace Corps volunteers would come in with their little scone that the host mom had made, and everybody was happy but me. And I'll be honest, I just was in a real bad situation. They stuck me in a house this might be the only beef I have with Peace Corps. They stuck me in a house with a woman who was about my age and her husband, and that's never going to be good. And the wife was starving me. Like, Peace Corps gave her money to feed and wash my clothes, and she was great about laundry because in those days you don't know how to do your own laundry. Now I have trouble trusting the washing machine. I know I'm better than the washing machine. But, one time I went in there, big thing of rice, because rice is cheap. Little bit of tomato soup that's enough for, say, like 3 spoonfuls to make the rice not be completely dry. And then a big fat chicken claw, one of its feet. You know how the feet have the nail, the claw. And I'm like, this is like, that old like Betty Davis, like whatever happened to Baby Jane, and she's like, giving her sister rats for dinner or something. The old black and white film. I'm like, okay, this is, but Peace Corps. Knowing anything about African culture, Africans will tell you like we are jealous, and they only say it like they're proud, like we're jealous, like we get jealous easily, and like why would they put me in? I'm a 24-year-old American blonde girl. Why would you, dripping with privilege, any African man is going to go for that, really. I mean, it's maybe a visa,
Yeah.
It's a very typical situation that I literally face every day of my life in Africa, and now I just know how to deal with it.
So what was the reporting mechanism? How did you communicate out that this is not a safe situation?
I think I don't even know if I told my, I don't know if I told my boss, the lady that I love, but I told different people that were like, I think the head of the training, the people who, like the spokespeople in the training center.
Right, because you're seeing them every day.
Right.
Okay,
And yeah,
that
so
makes
I would
sense.
tell them, I think the boss was in the capital city and Lusaka, and then that training camp was a couple hours away. But I'll never forget this one guy who was very outspoken, and he comes from our tribe on the western side of Zambia, the Lozis, and they're very, very strong people. The old days it was Barotse land, and now it's the western province of Zambia, but it used to be basically like its own country. And Zambians are generally very soft-spoken, but the Lozis tend to be very bold. And one of these guys that worked at the training center was a Lozi. And when he found out that they were shifting all of my stuff out of the host house, and I was going to stay in a room on the training camp, which those weren't like residential quarters, but they made me a bedroom because I couldn't stay there, And he just looked at me and said, "So are you going to leave your site too?" And I'll never forget that. And I wish I could see him today and be like, I didn't leave my site.
You literally
Made a massive project.
Yeah, you've
Brought my
literally-
kid over here. She speaks Tonga
You've never
like a
left your
Zambian.
site.
I never. That was.
There's-
I never left the site.
yeah. All right, so we have a time limit
Yes.
here.
Yes, we do.
I'm looking at the clock over there.
Okay.
And we want our hosts to be able to leave on Friday.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so let me ask you one last question
Okay.
before we wrap this one up. Talk about your first impressions of Zambia when you went over for training.
Safety. And they didn't do this on purpose, but I swear this was juxtaposed because we had flown into Johannesburg, South Africa, which is famously one of the most violent. I think that and Mexico City, maybe any inner city LA, they all compete for the most violent. But we flew into Joburg, and we spent, I think, a night or two at like a Holiday Inn in Johannesburg, and just aggressive. And I was just like, I'm scared, Like it was just, there was just, you can almost, it's so funny now living in Africa all these years, studying the different tribes and the cultures and the history, you can understand that the way that those dynamics between, the Dutch, the Afrikaans, and the local Zulu people, you can understand why things are the way that they are now. But I didn't know all that at the time and was like scared. And then after a night or two, whatever it was, when we flew to Zambia, it's like a whole nother dynamic. And that was the word I will always use, is safe. The Zambians are safe. They want you to stay forever, which I guess is what I did. But they don't have that. There's no apartheid that's been part of their blood. They've always owned their own country. They were, in a very odd way, I would argue that Zambia was ever colonized. Technically it was. It was a British colony, but the Brits basically wanted nothing to do with it. It got independence in 1964, well before most of the African nations got independence. Nobody really wanted it. All they had was copper. For that reason, the Zambians are very happy. They've never really had to, it's always been theirs. Mm-hmm. Nobody came and tried to steal it. No imperialistic colonial empire came to buy it out or enslave them, or it was just this landlocked paradise.
And I love how you're connecting that to the general personality.
Oh, gosh.
Really interesting, connecting history to personality like that.
I'm not going to boast about the food in Zambia. I'm not going to boast about the nightlife in Lusaka. Mm-hmm. But I will go to my grave saying that Zambians are probably the kindest people that walk the earth. They won't fight with you, no matter how hard you try.
Well, on that note, I'm going to stop.
Okay.
That is really great. Tomorrow we're going to talk a great deal about Zambia. I can't wait.